Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and this will be a quite bullish Ripple and XRP video because we'll start here with this from Link2. We covered this the other day. They had put this, tweeted out this article. Ripple Labs CEO Brad Garlinghouse announced that Dubai FinTech that the company intends to deploy over $1 billion to expand its blockchain services beyond providing liquidity, possibly through acquisitions. So Ripple's going to have tons going on, whether it's in the United States or not. But I think you'll find this video pretty interesting because Brad Garlinghouse is featured here too. But Link2 is one of my sponsors. They have Ripple equity available. It's in the top of the description. You can go check it out. Check this out. Microsoft says CCP hackers compromise critical U.S. infrastructure as Department of Homeland Security warns of grave threat. That's kind of spooky. Then we've got this. Fitch Ratings has placed the United States AAA rating on a negative rating watch. Here we go. This is the kind of political games that are played usually when Congress is trying to argue over whether to get agreement on something or not. And make no mistake, these ratings companies are in the back pocket of probably the bad guys in government, if I had to bet, but I can't prove that. We do know that the ratings agencies are pretty much controlled by Wall Street, and we know this because when they did the The Big Short movie, there's a scene in there I've talked about on this channel before where the main guy sits down with the people at the S&P 500 and he says, wait a minute. He goes, you're rating all of these credit default swaps and you're being paid by the guys like Goldman Sachs that are creating them? And he says, how can that be? And she basically says, well, that's just the way it works. And, you know, even though the Wall Street and the politicians tried to act like they passed Dodd-Frank to fix all the problems from the financial crisis, I don't think they changed that little conflict of interest. Now, this is Brad Garlinghouse in an interview yesterday or in the last couple of days. This is the video that's going around this morning.
Now, in terms of where things stand today, I'll try to not get too much into the legal weeds. You are right that I feel very confident that we'll see a decision from the courts in this year. In fact, I think I would guess it'll be in weeks, not months. There's some decisions that happened last week that you may have read about, that the judge ruled against the SEC's effort to redact certain information about a very kind of infamous speech that the then director of corporate finance, a guy named Bill Hinman, gave, talking about why ETH, in his view, was not a security. And the court just ruled last week that the notes and emails associated with that are going to be made public and should be public around June 13th. So I think that's a huge win for transparency. But what really calls out is there hasn't been clarity. And despite calls and demands from leaders across the crypto industry, we haven't seen that yet. But as I said, Ripple decided to lean in and fight this fight, both for Ripple but for the whole industry. We've spent a lot of money defending it. And I think what we've called out is really that the government in the United States and the SEC particularly is putting politics ahead of smart policy. And because of that, you're seeing entrepreneurs go overseas. You're seeing companies like Ripple. Most of our hiring is non-U.S. now. Most of our customers, as I mentioned, are non-U.S. And so I think it's kind of to be expected.
Well, the headline there is weeks, not months, but I find it very interesting that he draws the that he makes the comment about weeks, not a decision in weeks, not months, and he immediately goes to the Hinman emails, almost as if that would have an influence on this thing wrapping up faster or sooner rather than later. There was another clip from him in this interview that I thought was interesting. This is where he talks about Jay Clayton and how he dropped this lawsuit.
Yes, or at least by the end of this year.
Yeah. So, look, as you asked, I'll kind of zoom back. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission first sued Ripple in December of 2020. It was actually December 22nd, right before Christmas. The chairman of the SEC at the time actually left the position. He resigned from the position the next day. And, when that first happened, one of the things I said very publicly is that I viewed this not just as an attack on Ripple, but really the entire crypto industry. And we had been advocating for clarity for crypto in the United States for years. And I think what people have come to find is, in fact, we were right. 2 years later, I think just about everyone believes and understands that what Ripple, this attack from the US SEC is about much more than just Ripple. And in fact, it's about the whole industry. And the ability for Ripple to kind of prevail will have a big impact on crypto broadly. So I think many people have come.
Okay. Then there was this. Charles Gasparino went on. There are several things in this clip that I'm going to hit. I'm just going to stop it as it goes, just because there's a couple of things going on here. And I give Charles Gasparino full credit for helping to cover the ETHgate situation when nobody else was. But there are some things that bother me about some of the things that he's saying right now. And because I know that he's smarter than that. And I'll just stop as I go over them, okay? So there's some things here that don't add up at all.
And here's where it may come from an old friend of the crypto industry, Gary Gensler. So here's what we know from, I'm saying that sarcastic.
And the backdrop to this clip, by the way, is that Brad Garlinghouse seems awfully bullish the last few comments we've seen him make. And at XRP Las Vegas, he says, yeah, when this is done, we'll have a proper party. And I was sitting there thinking, well, who would say that? It's almost like he had a feeling he had already won. So you're getting that vibe over here from Brad Garlinghouse. And then this whole clip right here is Charles Gasparino talking about what Gary's doing and how he's really trying to flog his staff and hurry them up, almost as if Gary knows he's going to win. But then Gasparino ends the clip by saying that Gary thinks he's going to win, which doesn't add up with what we're seeing.
Sarcastically, here's what we know from securities lawyers who represent clients that are under the gun in the crypto industry. What we understand is that Gensler is preparing essentially what has been described as a second leg of enforcement actions against the industry. It's been described to me from these same lawyers. Again, these are securities lawyers. A lot of them used to work at the SEC. You know, that's kind of how it works. You work at the SEC, then you go into private practice. What they're saying is that he's flogging, that's the word I heard, flogging his staff.
When I hear that, flogging, flogging reminds me of if you watch the movies with slaves and stuff, they would flog the slaves, or flogging a horse to make the horse get up and start running faster. In other words, flogging to hurry them up. In other words, hurry them up because what he says later in this clip, which is Ripple, the end of this case. And listen to what he says here.
Crypto cases, and bring a lot of them following the FTX debacle.
Now, following the FTX debacle, see, now this is where we get disingenuous. They're trying to draw, and this has been a constant from the SEC as well as the media. They're trying to draw a straight line from a fraud that the government was in bed with, FTX. And that's not just one branch. That's FTX was having planning sessions with the White House, the CFTC, the SEC, Congress. They're trying, it was exposed as a fraud. It was also involved in laundering money to the Ukraine. Okay, so I mean, my gut has always told me that FTX was set up intentionally and probably with the help of the government. That's what I believe. Okay, I believe that it had everything to do with being offshore and being down around the islands, and just by coincidence, some of the same islands that some of the bad people had down there, right? This right here stinks to high heaven. And now to try to draw a straight line between, in other words, if you're in crypto, just by default, you're a fraud like FTX. Whereas Ripple tried to work with these guys from day one. Makes no sense. So anybody that's trying to draw a straight line, now there are frauds, and if you draw a straight line from FTX to a fraud, well, for instance, and I'm not saying it's a fraud, but remember the Ethereum founding, remember the ICO video where Joseph Lubin is saying, he's telling people that he's going to help disguise whales? Well, I'm not saying that was fraud, but I am saying you might want to go look into that. No telling what that was, because they were helping to hide whales, folks, okay? But to point at, to try to draw a straight line between Ripple and FTX is just utterly ridiculous. They were literally trying to sit down and meet with Jay Clayton, and Jay Clayton and Garlinghouse is saying, you've got us in purgatory here. We just want to work within the rules. Tell us what we're dealing with here. And Clayton tried to divert them away from XRP and didn't want to talk about it. So let's talk about your business. Then drops the lawsuit and walks out the door a year or two later. Now, listen to the rest of this.
He's got good law on his side, and here's where he wants it. He wants to bring the cases, from what I understand, at least the read I'm getting. Okay, remember, I'm only as good as my sources. This is what they're telling me. The read is that they're looking at any case that has that is related to unregistered digital coins being sold that should be registered securities. That could mean both the sort of creators of the coin, the companies that are using it to finance whatever operations they have, like Ripple, like the case against Ripple, which is still not been settled. It's still going on. And exchanges. Okay, so that's what I understand. It's all encompassing. He's pushing for it. We should point out that there's a meeting tomorrow at the SEC. Apparently, the meeting with the commissioners occurs when they talk about enforcement cases. From what I understand, this will likely be part of that meeting. So stay tuned for more crypto cases coming soon. And again, on this whole issue of securities. Now, one point before I wrap.
So now he goes straight to, if Ripple wins, he's doing this because if Ripple wins, then it would prevent him from doing this. And so what this all looks like is that he thinks he's going to lose, and he's trying to hurry up these cases, because if he doesn't, he won't really be in a position to drop some of these cases.
If Ripple wins the case, this kind of becomes a moot point. It's going to be very hard for Gary Gensler to bring cases of unregistered securities if somehow the courts set a precedent that says you can issue these things and you don't have to register. And even if you use it to build out your platform, which Ripple did partially for their cross-border payment system. If they win the case, meaning the SEC wins, well, I think Gensler is smelling a win based on what happened at FTX and a lot more.
What does FTX has nothing to do with Ripple. And Charles Gasparino is smart enough to know this. This is why this whole clip stinks to me.
It's what's going to hit the fan.
Does anybody find it interesting? Look, the shadiest things that I've seen in crypto is the founding of Ethereum and FTX. You think it's a coincidence that just so happens that those are the two things that all these government people were behind the scenes working with? It's almost as if they wanted to do that so that they could use it later to beat the entire crypto industry over the head when they were ready for the real stuff that was going to be this industry. Because those two things, I mean, come on. And then, I don't want to go too far over here. I may just stop there. Well, I'll go over this. Ripple put this out yesterday. 2023 New Value Report. Top 5 crypto trends in business and beyond. I'll hit them. Crypto outlook remains overwhelmingly positive. High expectations are translating into real-world deployments. Anticipation for tokenized real-world assets continues to grow. Payments is the top use case for holding crypto. DeFi is coming to an institution near you. In other words, what, the banks are about to open up with DeFi? Is that what? I think the banks are about to open up. I think that's what Gary Gensler's been for all along, is to hold all this off, go after all the upstarts until his buddies over there on Wall Street are ready to open up their doors for crypto. Let's finish with Naveen Gupta talking about this and the power of crypto.
You touched on this before, specifically about remittances, but for payments and treasury leaders both in the region and abroad, what are the incentives for them to use crypto in their financial flows?
So let's take a simple example, right? So there is a buyer and supplier. Both of them are based in different countries. And today, the terms are net 30. That means the buyer pays the supplier 30 days after the goods have been received. Now, today, when they make the payment, the actual money is credited into the account of the supplier only on the 33rd day. That means they lose on an average 3 days of working capital every month. This compounds to 36 days over 1 year. Now, let's assume if they were using cryptocurrencies as a bridge, the payment...
By the way, if you hear a blender in the background, that is because my 17-year-old is now a meathead and is like mixing one of his protein shakes back there. And so I don't know if you've ever heard a blender on this channel before, but if you are hearing a blender right in the middle of a description of world-changing finance, that would be my meathead son. And I do mean meathead. This guy is big. Don't tell him, but he could kick my butt if he wanted to.
The supplier will be receiving it will be instant, eliminating this 36 days of wasteful working capital that today they have to bear with, which essentially means that they can be 10% more productive in their business by eliminating this and receiving the money on the 30th day when it is sent by the buyer. And that's the power of cryptocurrencies that the businesses would like to harness.
The region that you lead here, MENA, the Middle East and North Africa, there's been a lot of interest in crypto. Can you talk about the temperature here for crypto, the adoption of crypto in the Middle East?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, Middle East always had progressive regulations around crypto. So if you look at specifically the UAE, it already has enabling regulation. It has a virtual asset specific regulator that's helping with the adoption of cryptocurrencies itself. Every day, I get phone calls from multiple countries around the world for Web3 entrepreneurs who wants to move to the UAE and call it their home. And this is what we are seeing. We are seeing entrepreneurs, we are seeing money, we are seeing enabling regulation, and that's what's making the Middle East the hotbed for cryptocurrencies and entrepreneurship around it.
I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that my meathead son was using the blender to make his little protein shake this morning. Sorry for the